What is up, you guys? Welcome to Walk the Line. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into the UFC Vegas 99 fight card. Back-to-back fight cards taking place over at the UFC Apex. But don't forget, next week we have the huge UFC 308 fight card set to take place in Abu Dhabi, headlined by Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. I'm so hyped for that fight. I cannot wait to give you guys my predictions on how I think that's going to play out. If you guys follow me on IG, some of you guys probably already have an idea of which way I'm leaning. Or follow me on IG at MMA Fortune Teller _ and on Twitter at the MMA Teller. But I'm super pumped for that fight card. But today, we're diving into the UFC Vegas 99 fight card, which is a very fun one. Not a lot of huge names throughout the card, but a lot of exciting matchups. Of course, headlined by Michel Pereira and Anthony Hernandez. Us hardcore fans know how talented both these fighters are and the potential that they have. The winner of this fight is going to have a ton of potential behind them. They could look to make a run at the title. Now, you do have to understand that the top of this middleweight division is extremely stacked right now. A lot of people feel that Sean Strickland should be next. He should get a rematch against DDP for the title that a lot of people thought that he should have never lost. Besides that, you have Khamzat Chimaev set to fight with Robert Whittaker. If Robert Whittaker goes out there and finishes Khamzat Chimaev like I think that he can, Robert Whittaker will be on a 3-fight winning streak. The former champion of the world, maybe he gets a rematch with DDP. Besides that, you have very hot fighters like Nasruddin Imavov, Gregory Rodriguez, and Caio Pihalo. So just understand that the winner of this fight will be in the mix with those fighters there. The winner of this fight won't be that far away from fighting for the title, I'm telling you. The winner of this fight, they go out there, get a finish. They go out there, get a huge victory over a fighter like Nasruddin Imavov or some of the other fighters' names that we just mentioned. They will be just at an arm's reach from fighting for the belt. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for these fighters to break out. And besides that, you got Rob Font and Kyler Phillips in the co-main event. I always enjoy watching Kyler Phillips fight. That dude moves very differently in the cage. He's a fighter that's a little bit under the radar. I saw people kind of disrespecting him on some of the forums, talking about how Rob Font only loses to some of the top fighters in the game, and Kyler Phillips isn't on his level. We'll talk about that fight a little bit, but like I said, a lot of exciting fights. We won't go too much into it right now. Let's just jump into the first fight here. But real quick, I just want to let you guys know, if you want to work with me for my official plays, just reach out to me. I'll give you further information about that. We have been on absolute fire, okay, guys? Absolute fire. Just destroying all these fight cards. So come work with me. Let's make some money together. And then the last thing, if anyone's looking to sign up to a new sports book, reach out to me. I will give you my referral link. If you sign up through it, I'm going to give you guys a special gift there, okay? It'll be worth your while. And BetUS, they're giving you 150% match on your first 3 deposits, okay? No other sports books are doing that. So shoot me a message. I'll give you further information there. And with no further ado, let's jump into the first fight.
The teller.
The freak, Robelis Despaigne, is set to return to the cage. He should be hungrier than ever here, coming off his first ever professional mixed martial arts loss. A lot of people would say he was exposed against Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's taken on Austen Lane. Both these fighters have accolades outside of just fighting in MMA. More importantly, Robelis Despaigne, the bronze medalist in Taekwondo in the 2012 London Olympics. That skill set carries over to the cage a lot more than playing in the NFL. Austen Lane, the former Jacksonville Jaguars player there. I believe he played defensive end. Don't overlook that though, man. He is a solid athlete. I know a lot of people like to poke fun at Austen Lane based on some of the performances that he's had, getting knocked out by Greg Hardy in his first stint on Dana White's Contender Series and being brutally knocked out as of recently. Go say something slick to Austen Lane when you see him in person, when he's towering over you. Now, Robelis Despaigne is 6'7", and he is a nasty striker. Now, I would argue to you that he's a different type of high-level striker than what we're used to seeing as of recently. You think about like Alex Pereira or Cesar Almeida. How about Vakitov, who just got the contract the other week on Dana White's Contender Series? Despaigne is a little different than your typical Glory or K1 striker. Again, we talked about the Taekwondo accolades. This is a fighter that's looking to explode in on you and hit you with that one-shot kill. And that's what he's done in the sport of MMA since coming over in every single fight except for that last one. You take a look at his first 5 professional fights. I mean, he's getting these fighters out of there quick, including in his UFC debut where he knocked out Josh Parisian in just 18 seconds. Before that, his fight went 4 seconds. How about the fight before that over at Fury Challenge Series where the fight lasted 3 seconds? And then the fight before that just took 12 seconds. I mean, he's going out there, he's finishing you within seconds, and he's landing a brutal strike on you. Of course, he's going to be live to get a knockout here. Austen Lane is a fighter that has struggled with getting hit with that big shot and being flatlined. We already talked about the knockout loss that Austen Lane took against Greg Hardy way back in 2018 as he came up short with getting the contract the first time on Dana White's Contender Series. But in his last 2 fights too, got knocked out by Justin Tafa with ease. A minute and 22 seconds, he was rocked brutally in there. Brain took some serious damage in that fight, and then he followed that up with another knockout loss against Johanta Deniz. Now, he had decent success in the first round. He kind of weathered the storm in the first round, but I would argue to you that his cardio is questionable in that last fight as well, which is something you have to keep an eye on here, because he's going to need to have a gas tank. He's going to need to change levels, work the wrestling throughout this fight, and try to grind Despaigne out. That is the path to victory, and he will face danger every round. When round 2 and round 3 kicks off, he will face danger once again, and he just has to be just brush, just touch lightly, and he will crumble in there. So that's the problem that Austen Lane is facing here. Now, I will be tuned in for sure, and I'll be on the edge of my seat, specifically in the first couple minutes here when Robelis is in there. But listen, guys, I have question marks in regards to who Despaigne is as a fighter. In fact, I don't even know if I have question marks. I think I have the answer, right? If he doesn't land that big shot on you, he's going to struggle. He's 36 years old. He doesn't have that grappling experience. I mean, he can fine-tune that aspect of his game only so much. I mean, yeah, it'll get a little better and a little better, but it will never get to that level. And I think that he's going to struggle against guys that could change levels on him and grind him out. Again, we saw that in the Waldo Cortez Acosta fight. I actually do believe that Austen Lane has the potential to pull that off in this fight. We've seen him have decent success doing that in some fights. Not consistently, but we have seen him use grappling to win fights before, especially if you look up some of his regional tape. But I just think that Robelis Despaigne is going to flatline him here. I got to be honest with you guys. I definitely see that being the case. The real question that we're talking here is, do you want to chalk up minus 370 on Robelis Despaigne, a fighter that is extremely suspect? Okay, I don't personally. I don't. Okay, he opened up as a minus 360 on BetUS. He's now a minus 370. Minuscule movement coming his way. If Robelis Despaigne would have had the finish over Waldo, the line for this fight would have been comical. He probably would have been like a minus 1500. We've seen some huge lines next to his name, and it's due to the flashy style that he has. Okay, so don't get caught up in that too much, because there's going to be a lot of fights where Despaigne is going to get dragged to the deep waters as he fights more high-level fighters. I mean, that's just the honest truth there. Styles make fights, and he'll have his big KOs here and there, but this isn't a fighter that's going to make a run in this division or nothing like that. Just understand that, okay? He has been checked, all right? He's been fraud checked, as a lot of you guys like to say, okay? And he's still a freak. I think he gets the KO victory here. Be careful with this betting line. I think it's better off to sit this one on the sidelines and just kind of enjoy it and see if he can get a flashy KO. And if you're looking at prop bets for this fight, even if you take him to get a KO, the line's probably going to be the same. I mean, we could dive into that. We'll probably do a prop edition for this card, which I'm aiming to do that. The KO prop on him is probably going to be almost the same line as him on the money line. So, I mean, you're not really going to snipe anything there either. Give me Robelis Despaigne to get that first round knockout. In the women's strawweight division, we have two fighters looking to get their first ever UFC victories. They're both 0-1. They came up short in their debuts. Now, you can argue that Elise Ardelean, who's taken on Melissa Martinez here, you can argue that Elise did win that UFC debut fight against Shauna Bannon. It was a fight that played out very closely. I'm not saying it was a robbery or anything like that, but the difference for me was the fact that Ardelean intertwined her grappling with her striking. She had almost 6 minutes of control time, landing 2 of 4 takedown attempts. And that's something you really want to keep an eye on here, because although Melissa Martinez is very polished on the feet, she came into the sport of MMA with that kickboxing background. Although she's very polished there, we saw in her UFC debut against Elise Reed that she wasn't able to create that space that she needed to work her striking game, and she was kind of smothered in that third round. That third round really cost her the fight, in my opinion. Elise Reed was working her in the clinch, got some takedowns solidified. So you really want to see Melissa Martinez show some growth there. The thing that she has going for her, though, is that fight took place over 2 years ago. Okay, now she's 27 years old. She's still very young. She had over 2 years to work on that aspect of her game. You've seen her brother, David Martinez, just fight on Dana White's Contender Series, and he got a contract. He looked phenomenal. You saw how dangerous his striking is. But Melissa Martinez and her brother David Martinez seem to be very cerebral fighters. Her brother David is a doctor outside of just fighting. And I think that Melissa Martinez is going to make the necessary adjustments here. And with all that time that she's had to work on that aspect of her game, I see her creating space, keeping this fight on the feet where she should get the better of Ardelean standing. But for all you Ardelean fans out there, don't worry, because if she is cut from the UFC after this loss, going 0-2 and her first 2 fights here with the promotion, you could still go catch her on OnlyFans, and you can keep up to date with her there. And of course, I say that just kidding, because win or lose, if she puts on a show, I could see the UFC even giving her another opportunity based on the fact that maybe they thought she won that first fight. And she has a good following outside the cage. She has a lot of followers on IG, and you guys know that does carry weight these days in the fight game. But yes, I have Melissa Martinez winning this fight. I just think that the striking is going to be the difference here. Melissa Martinez, if she can keep her fight standing, she has a tailor-made skill set to just string off decision victories in the UFC. As far as fighting in the middle of the pack of this division, she can go out there. She can win a lot of decisions. I think that you'll start to see the numbers uptick for her as far as the output goes. I know it says she's only landing 3 strikes per minute right now due to that one fight. She wasn't able to create that space. Over time, she creates that space. You could see a number next to her name, like a 5 significant strikes landed per minute. I really could see her putting a lot of volume out with her kicking game, and her hands aren't bad either. And you could see her just winning a lot of decisions in the cage, but she has to keep her fight standing. And I think that she'll do okay. So I do have her getting her first UFC victory here. Now, she opened as a -151 favorite. She's now a -155. Again, minuscule movement here. She's not that big of a favorite. And people do have question marks about her, and I understand why. Also, just note, man, Ardelean, even though she didn't look that bad in her UFC debut, she's a fighter that is 9-6 as a pro. She's been stringing off some victories as of recently, but had a lot of early hiccups in her professional career. And you got to kind of wonder, when a fighter's losing fights left and right like that, what are they really made of? I mean, how talented are they? But we'll give her the benefit of the doubt because she has looked better as of recently. But I still like Melissa Martinez to get the unanimous decision here. And that line's not that wide for me. Staying put in this division, Elise Reed, who we were just talking about, is now taking on Jessica Penne. We probably won't go on too long about this fight here, but this is somewhat of a stylistic clash. Jessica Penne is a fighter that has had a lot of success with her grappling. She seems to be pretty polished down there. Elise Reed, it's not that she doesn't know what she's doing as far as the grappling goes. We just talked about the fact she was able to use some of her grappling skills to solidify that W against Martinez. But Elise Reed is a fighter that's more known for her striking. She actually landed a solid strike against Martinez early in that fight as well. So take note of that. But I do have this being a little bit of a stylistic clash. If Elise Reed is able to keep this fight standing, I think she gets the better of Jessica Penne. Jessica Penne is a fighter that has taken a lot of damage on the feet throughout the years. You think about the Emily Ducote fight where she was butchered in that fight, absolutely bloodied up. And then if you want to go back all the way to the Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight, which took place back in 2015, that was for the title. I would say that was the best performance we've ever seen from JJ. She just put it on her, bloodied up Penne really bad. So Penne is a little slow and vulnerable to being hit with big shots there. And I could see, I really can see Reed getting the better of her there. But I've seen Reed have make some bad mistakes in the cage with her grappling and down on the mat. And Jessica Penne is a little bit of an opportunist. We've seen her go out there and sneak off some slick submissions. Even as of recently, right? She's 41 years old, but even as of recently, she went out there and she did have a nice little submission victory against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She caught her with that armbar, and she has some tricks up her sleeve there. So I think that this is a stylistic clash, and I think it's more likely that we see the younger, fresher Elise Reed, who's hitting her physical prime, who's shown growth with her grappling, be able to keep this fight standing and get the better of the striking. And also, I do know that Elise Reed is coming off a submission loss against Lupe Godinez, who is a fighter that Jessica Penne just returned, right? She came from the time machine, came back to the fight game after a long layoff and had a sneaky victory over Lupe Godinez. Man, that just, you talk about MMA math not adding up sometimes. I mean, there's just some weird things going on there. I don't know how Lupe lost that fight to Penne, but she did. But that won't steer me away from still taking Elise Reed here. I just think that Elise Reed will have success with the striking, like I said. Elise Reed, she is a -155 currently, opened up as a -165. Some up and down movement. She was as low as a -147. But I think that -155 is a pretty accurate line, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see her more towards a -175. I think that she can even kind of trend up towards that way. You're kind of just hoping that she doesn't slip on that banana peel and get some hooks sunk in and get caught with the rear naked choke or a slick armbar or something like that. Other than that, I think that the younger, fresher fighter will be a step ahead here. Give me Elise Reed. And even with that line, that's a line that you could potentially target. In the women's bantamweight division, we have Joselyne Edwards taking on Tamires Vidal. Make this one clean for you guys as well. We won't put too much time into this one. But Joselyne Edwards is a fighter that has shown some decent development in her game throughout the last couple of years. I understand that she's coming off 2 losses in a row, as is Vidal. These fighters have some similar opponents. Do understand that they both took a loss to Aileen Perez. I know Aileen Perez was DQ'd against Vidal, and Vidal got the W there, but understand that Perez was en route to winning that fight. Hit her with an illegal shot there, but was putting it on her. And Joselyne Edwards just recently took a loss to Aileen Perez. Before that, she lost to Nora Cornol, who's not that bad of a fighter. It's a fighter that shows to be a little dangerous in the feet, but that wasn't her best performance there, and she got hit with some big shots. She shows that she's a little vulnerable on the feet. Can Vidal land something big on her? I think that she'll need to, and we've seen Vidal do that. It's not that she's never done something like that before. When you think about the performance she had against Romana Pascual, came into the UFC, that was her debut fight, landed a nasty knee in that fight, hit her with the flying knee. Pascual, a common opponent of Joselyne as well. Joselyne styled on her, took the decision victory there. But I think that was just more of an outlier performance by Tamires Vidal, because she has not looked the part since then. She's lost 2 fights in a row, and even in those fights, she really hasn't had any big moments. She lost to Montserrat Rendon, just lost to Melissa Gatto, was finished up there in the beginning of the 3rd round. I don't see any of those flashes that she's shown against Pascual, and Pascual is a very low-level fighter, and I think that I don't want to say she got lucky because I want to give her credit there, but I think that was just more of an outlier. I don't expect to see her doing that time and again in the cage. I don't even really expect her to do that again in the cage, because she loses this fight, she's probably going to be cut from the UFC. And I do have Joselyne Edwards winning this fight. I like some of the growth that I've seen from her. You talk about the OnlyFans for Elise Ardelean. Maybe Joselyne Edwards wants to look into that. They got some similarities going on there, but I will take Joselyne Edwards to win this fight. I think that she gets the better of the striking exchanges. She's a little bit more grounded with her striking. She pumps the jab very well, and I could see her outpointing Vidal. And you look at the numbers here too. Joselyne Edwards landing 4.35 significant strikes per minute compared to the 3.2 of Vidal. And Joselyne Edwards showing some growth in her overall game, like I said, and just will highlight a couple performances that she's had as of recently. I know we talked about the losses, but she dug deep in the Lucy Puttilova fight. Puttilova is not a bad fighter. She decisioned Ji Young Kim. We talked about the Romana Pascual victory there. So, give me Joselyne Edwards to win a decision. And right now she is a minus 230 favorite. So she's not at a low price tag. I'll say that much, especially for a fight like this. But, that line's like that for a reason as well, because you're not facing too much danger, right? And as the fight plays out, Joselyne Edwards should be the fighter that prevails there. You're not really worried about Vidal grinding Edwards out, taking her down and having a lot of success there. You don't have to worry about that too much. And the one thing you're worried about, is Vidal landing a big strike to shake things up? And I wouldn't be so worried about that. Just note that Vidal's 26 and you may see some growth for her there. But this is Joselyne Edwards via unanimous decision for me all day. In the bantamweight division, we have Jean Matsumoto taking on Brad Katona. Katona, the 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner. A lot of your guys' favorite fighter is Katona, man. He has a very exciting fighting style and even has a better personality. Obviously, I say that joking around for those of you guys that eat tuna fish warm out of a can for dinner. The thing with Brad Katona is he's still just 32 years old. You would think that he's a little bit older. He's been around the game for a long time. He's a crafty veteran. And stylistically, if he's fighting a fighter that has some holes in his grappling and in their cardio, he could without a doubt take advantage of that. But that doesn't seem to be the case for Jean Matsumoto, man. This is a fighter that's just 25 years old, and he seems to be a well-rounded, a new threat to this division. Another one of those fighters that you can add to the very long list of a young, promising fighter that recently came over from DWCS. He fought on the show about a year ago, solidified 2 of the 3 rounds against Casey Tanner. The strikes were pretty even throughout that fight, but the difference was that Matsumoto landed a lot heavier. He's a fighter that really sits down on his strikes and throws some nasty leg kicks. You definitely have to keep an eye at the leg attack game that he will have in this fight. I expect him to chew Katona's legs up. Also, And let me just note this as well. Casey Tanner is a fighter that just bounced back with a solid victory as well. He's a talented dude. He's only lost to Matsumoto, just had a first-round submission victory over in the LFA. So that's a solid win. And then let me just say this too. He comes into the UFC and gets a submission over Dan Argueta. Dan Argueta, a crafty fighter that came from the Ultimate Fighter. And he was able to hit Dan Argueta with that guillotine choke. So, I mean, he shows to have fight-ending ability, not just with his striking, but even more so with his grappling. If you look at the numbers, he's a fighter that has more submission victories, but I think he can get the finish in a variety of ways, and we'll see that as his career progresses. Brad Katona, on the other hand, is a fighter that just pushes the pace with his grappling, looks to use his cardio and the grappling to kind of drown you there. And I don't think that Gene Matsumoto is the fighter that you're going to be able to do that against. Also, when you take a look at Katona, he's 32 years old. I mean, he's in his physical prime, but he, to me, seems like a fighter that is maybe starting to decline a little bit earlier in his career. Just he's not. You take a look at the Garrett Armfield fight. That was a fight where we saw the recipe to victory. Not that we didn't already know it. You keep the fight standing and you outstrike him. You use his very small frame that he has. He's a fighter that only has a 64.5 inch wingspan, which is very small for this division. Matsumoto's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. And it's not even that Matsumoto's that long there. You use that against Katona. You stuff the takedowns, you keep him on the outside, and you pick him apart there. Okay, we saw Armfield do that. I think Matsumoto can do that. And as Katona tries to pressure with his takedowns and whatnot, I think he could run into trouble. You better watch himself. You may see Katona take his first ever submission loss. I think there is a possibility of that happening. I think that Matsumoto's the real deal. And this fight screams to me, Matsumoto, he rises his game to the level of a veteran like Katona's. He's not a fighter that's going to get exploited by the crafty veteran. I think Matsumoto shows to have a way higher ceiling than Katona ever had. And I think that Matsumoto goes out here and gets the victory. Now, the question is does Matsumoto get a finish in this fight? And it's a really good question because I've been a little torn on it. Katona is a fighter that is not easy to finish, right? He's never been knocked out and he's never been subbed. Okay, so when you're talking about getting a finish on him, you do have to respect the durability that he's showcased throughout the years. But Matsumoto is a fight finisher. I'm not going to be able to take Matsumoto to get the finish here. Like I said, I think that Katona will dole this fight out a little bit as he tries to implement his tactics there, pushing against the cage and whatnot. He'll dole the fight out. He'll waste a lot of the time on the clock. And I'm going to say Matsumoto gets the unanimous decision, hurts Katona at times, but I can't really bank against Katona getting finished. He's been very durable. He's very crafty, high fight IQ. He goes out there, tries to not take a lot of damage, tries to sneak off his little victories, and things aren't going his way. I think he'll use tactics to kind of waste time and just get out of the cage unscathed and not being finished. So give me Matsumoto to win a unanimous decision. He's a -270. That's a pretty high line against a crafty veteran in Katona there. It's a little high for my liking. I have a lot of confidence on Matsumoto, but I'm not sure if it's a -270 confidence. I may have this fight capped more as like a 230, 240, which is not that far off, but I'm just saying I don't see a ton of value on this -270 line. We got some ranked flyweight action set to take place. We have the number 7th ranked Matheus Nicolau, who's coming off 2 losses. He's taken on the now 3-0 in the UFC, Asu Almabayev, who's ranked 14th. Asu Almabayev representing Kazakhstan, not to be confused with Azat Maxim. Maxim doesn't have the same potential as an Almabayev, in my opinion. Now, Matheus Nicolau, let's talk about him for a second, right? He's coming off 2 losses. Like I said, he has been brutally knocked out in both of those fights, and they both were recent. Okay, you have to have question marks in regards to the chin of a Matheus Nicolau. You have to have question marks in regards to the decision-making that he's making in the cage, because Alex Perez is a fighter that gets subbed early in his fights very often, and Matheus Nicolau chose to have a straight kickboxing match with him in the first round as he was coming into that fight after being brutally knocked out by Brandon Royval not long before. Okay, so let's just say this. Matheus Nicolau is not in my good graces. Now, what makes this fight interesting is the fact that Almabayev has been having success in the UFC using his wrestling and his grappling, right? He's not really going out there and looking to put too much damage on his opposition with his striking, although we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But he's using his wrestling and control time to dominate these fighters. We saw him get a rear naked choke against Ode Osborne in his UFC debut, controlled CJ Vergara and Jose Johnson a lot throughout their matches. And the problem with that is that Matheus Nicolau is a very decorated BJJ player, okay? He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that really knows what he's doing down there. And I'm not so sure if Almabayev is just going to be able to control him for 15 minutes down on the mat like he did against Vergara or Johnson. So that's the thing that's interesting there. But I will say this, even though Almabayev has just 3 knockouts to his name, I think that his striking is coming around. You see him getting in work with Henry Hooft over there, who in my opinion is one of the best striking coaches in the game. One of the best MMA coaches in the game in general. But Asu Almabayev, in the limited times we see him on the feet, you could tell he's a technical fighter. And I think that it may just take a gust of wind to knock Matheus Nicolau out once again. So I think that's actually a very likely scenario that Almabayev gets a knockout standing. And then even down on the mat, maybe he lights Nicolau up with some ground and pound, and Nicolau's just so frail that he crumbles there as well. So those are things you got to keep an eye out for. I actually will pick Asu Almabayev to win this fight via TKO. I'm going to say he gets a TKO, man. I have major question marks into the durability of Nicolau. I know that the numbers as far as Asu Almabayev getting knockout victories are very limited, but I'm going to say he goes out there and gets his first ever KO victory in the octagon. Okay, maybe a little bit of a reach, but I don't know, man. Nicolau, I'm a little down on him right now, and I think that it's a lot more likely than some of you guys think. Now, maybe he hurts Nicolau and he could sub him, but I think that that's probably even more unlikely, even though Almabayev is a sub artist, right? 9 of his 20 victories have come by way of sub compared to just the 3 knockouts. But I think that that's even more unlikely. Nicolau has never been subbed as a pro, and he really knows how to defend down there, and I think it's just more likely that he gets opened up on and gets TKO'd. So give me Almabayev to land something big and shake things up here. So we take a look at the betting line. Almabayev right now, depending on the book you're looking at, he's right around a -170. Okay, so he's a decent favorite there. And I'm down on Nicolau enough to say that line is accurate, or even there's value on it. He could even be a bigger favorite. I really think that Almabayev goes out there and handles this fight. I'm down on Nicolau. I'm down on Nicolau, man. And I think that we start to see him really fall off. I know he's just 31 years old, but I think that he's going to be one of those fighters that really declines in his prime ages, maybe just due to the fact that he's taken a lot of damage throughout the years and had an early start to his career. He has a good amount of mileage on him already, and I think unfortunately for him, he's a fighter that never really gets to train back in the tracks and never makes a run in this division again. He'll probably lose that ranking next to his name here shortly. Nicely done matchmaking by the UFC here. Darren Elkins taking on Daniel Pineda. Darren Elkins, 40 years old. Daniel Pineda, 39, on the verge of being 40. Both men have a ton of professional experience under their belts. This fight makes a lot of sense in that light, right? Now, Darren Elkins, he's a fighter. I'll be honest with you guys. I've been fading him forever, and it's paid off at times, but he's also froze the clock at times, right? He's gone in there, and he's used his cardio, his toughness, his durability to break younger fighters down, okay? You take a look at some of the work that he's done over the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, he just had a submission victory over TJ Brown, was able to defeat Tristan Connolly. Now, we weren't really relying on Connolly there, but I did back fighters like Derek Minner over him and paid the price for that. I wonder if Derek Minner actually was trying to win that fight, but you got to respect Darren Elkins. The nickname, The Damage, is one of the most fitting nicknames I've ever seen. It fits perfectly that he has that tattoo right across his body, and he put that all on display way back in the day when he got a victory over Mirsad Bektic. Some of you guys may not be familiar with Mirsad Bektic, but he's a fighter. You know, when I was diving into the sport over a decade ago, however long you want to go back, Mirsad Bektic was one of the top young prospects that was working his way to the UFC. If they had Dana White's Contender Series back then, he would have been one of the most highlighted fighters on that show. Okay, he eventually made it to the UFC. He was training at American Top Team in Coconut Creek. He had his run. He also trained over at TriStar in Canada as well. But in that fight, he was destroying Darren Elkins, and Darren Elkins never gave up on himself and eventually got the 3rd round TKO finish over Bektic, just taking all this damage and then gassing Bektic out and then finishing him. Okay, and that's really been the story of his career when he's having success, man. This dude is ridiculous. There have always been these notorious stories about Darren Elkins in the gym, training over at Team Alpha Male. I've heard Faber talking about them. He says that the work ethic and the time that Darren Elkins puts into training is second to none. There's these stories about him just putting hours in at the gym and just having fresh bodies come in one after another. Elkins not fearing some of these highly touted Russian fighters that have came in to train with Team Alpha Male, and he's just letting them come fresh body one after another, and he just puts in work and had a lot of success doing that too. I mean, that's the type of fighter that he is. He strives off of his cardio, and if you fade, he will break you down and he will finish you. And that can be an issue for Daniel Pineda. He is a fighter that has been notorious for gassing out in his fights, okay? Darren Elkins will drown you in that type of situation. I will say this, though. What's interesting about Daniel Pineda, I want to bring this up. Every time we talk about Daniel Pineda, we always talk about that ridiculous night over at the PFL where he went on to get victories all in the same day. Victories over both fighters. Movlid Kabulov and Jeremy Kennedy got finishes on both of them. Those are two very respected fighters outside the UFC. Jeremy Kennedy, a former UFC fighter, but he did pop for performance-enhancing drugs after those fights, and those were overturned. He came back to the UFC, and he's had some up and down type of performances. But one thing that we have to note is he was usually a fighter that was breaking down and getting finished later in fights if he didn't have early success. But as of recently, he's been going to the final bell. I mean, he's been losing these fights against like Nathaniel Wood and Bruce Leroy, had a submission victory over Tucker Lutz. But he's looked okay as the fights progressed. If you remember those fights, like the Nathaniel Wood fight, those fights, you kind of were feeling that he was going to break down and be finished because you're remembering those old fights. But he held in there. He showed durability. He showed toughness. And if he could hang in this fight, I think he will have opportunities to have success, because standing, I think Daniel Pineda still shows to have a lot more left to offer. I think that he's more dangerous. He's more quick twitched. Well, Elkins, even getting older as well. I mean, he's always been a slow fighter. He takes a lot of damage. He's there to be hit. And I think that Pineda can land on him. Now, I really think that this is a fight that can go either way, but I got to stick to my same old story, man, and that's fading Elkins, okay? I kind of wanted to back Elkins here, but I'm going to stick to what I've always done, man. I just know that Elkins is going to be landed on, and there's always that high probability that he can be TKO'd, even though he's super tough, but he's going to take so much damage. You just feel with Father Time catching up to him too, and all the damage that he's taken, that he eventually is going to start to get knocked out more and more in the cage. And Pineda still looks pretty sharp there. So I am going to take Daniel Pineda to win this fight. And we take a look at the betting line here. Daniel Pineda, he's up -120 right now. He opened up as a -130. Slight movement towards Elkins' way, but this is a pick 'em fight. Pick your poison here. Hit the comment section up below. I want to know, are you guys backing Elkins or are you taking Pineda? I'm going to take the fighter that may be a little bit more questionable with his cardio down the line, but we'll start off sharper, stronger, and we'll have a chance to get that first round KO or just do some significant damage that can kind of control the fight. But even then, I admit, Elkins, he could weather that storm and he could just push forward and he could take over this fight easily. In the bantamweight division, we have Brady Hiestand taking on Jake Hadley. Now remember, Jake Hadley was a flyweight fighter. Okay, in his last fight, he bumped up to the bantamweight division, took a fight on short notice. Potentially his UFC career was on the line. Maybe he could have made a return to the octagon, but I kind of felt that he was going to get cut if he would have lost that fight. He's been on a little bit of a skid. He dug deep in that fight, though, against Cowlin Loughran, who is a fighter that a lot of people have respect for, kind of an up-and-coming prospect, and he was able to do what we thought he would have did. We picked him as the dog there. We thought that he would have got the better of the striking, but he had to keep the fight standing. If Cowlin was going to get those takedowns, it was going to be a problem for Hadley. We've seen Hadley struggle with fighters that could take him down. Cody Durden had a lot of success doing that. Alan Nascimento had a lot of success doing that against him in his UFC debut. Now, if he would have lost the Loughran fight, it would have been a 3-fight losing skid. And maybe I was talking a little bit too quick there. Maybe the UFC would have gave him another opportunity because he did take that fight on short notice. So most likely he would have got another opportunity. But still, it was a huge victory for him. Well, guess what? Brady Hiestand, you know what he's going to do. He's going to go in there and he's going to look to take you down. He's going to look to control you down on the mat. That's all he's been doing since we've been very familiar with him from The Ultimate Fighter. He made it to the finale there where he did lose to Ricky Turcios. In that Ricky Turcios loss, Ricky did exactly what Hadley needs to do in this fight, which was stuff takedowns, get that volume going on the feet, make it an ugly fight, but you can't be on your back, you can't be on your butt, you got to be standing, or you got to be working your way back up. Now, I do believe that Hadley has the potential to do that, but it's not going to be easy. As you've seen, Hiestand, as of recently, he's been having a lot of success with his grappling. What he was just able to do to Garrett Armfield really says a lot. Armfield was getting the better of those striking exchanges, hurt him really bad. And then eventually he still got him down to the mat and got that third round submission. The cardio for Hiestand is outstanding. Now, I really like everything Hadley stands for. Specifically, if you guys remember, there was that video that came out when he was just a young kid. He must have been like 8, 9 years old, and he's blowing birthday candles out on the cake, and he's wishing to one day be a UFC fighter. That I've always gravitated towards that video, man. I just have a lot of respect for seeing fighters that had the aspirations to be in the UFC from a very young age. There's something about that, man. I can relate to it in a lot of ways. Whether it's wanting to be in the UFC, be in the NFL, or whatever major sport you wanted to be, even if it was completely delusional, you got to respect the aspirations. And now he made his dream come true. I am a big Hadley fan. I like what he's about, but you guys know it's all strictly business here. I think that Hadley is going to run into some trouble here with the pressure and the grappling of Hiestand. Hiestand is not a small fighter for the division. Hadley, now he has been bulking up. That's one thing that you could say for Hadley. He's been bulking up and filling into this division. But I still think that he may be slightly undersized in there. And just the grappling and pressure of Hiestand, regardless, is going to be a lot to deal with. And I think that those types of situations can snag rounds for Hiestand. I think he is going to get some control time down in the mat, and that will push Hiestand to getting a unanimous decision victory. Maybe a split decision victory, but still a decision victory at that. Hadley could have success on the feet, but I don't know how long he'll be able to keep it there. And I mean, Hadley's polished with his BJJ. It's just his wrestling and his get-up game at times is suspect, and maybe Hiestand can even push late and try to get a submission as Hadley gets desperate trying to get back up to his feet. You take a look at some numbers here. Not that these are really indicative of what's going on, but Hiestand with a 46% takedown accuracy rate on his takedowns. But just understand this, it's not a super high ratio, but he's relentless with the takedown attempts. He's just going to continuously shoot and shoot and shoot. So even if he gets stuffed on a couple, he's going to keep coming. So Hadley has to just continuously defend all those takedowns where he can then have success out of the southpaw stance with that slick Philly shell style with his striking. But I really hope that Hadley is able to pull that off. Hope he's able to keep it standing and showcase his striking, because he'll be a lot more smooth and a lot slicker on the feet than Hiestand is. I just can't trust it. I can't trust it, guys. So yes, I do have Hiestand winning this fight via decision. Hiestand opened up as a minus 147. He's now minus 145. Barely any line movement at the moment. Brady, Hiestand, is there any value on that line? I think that's a very accurate line. I think that's a pinpoint line right there. That's where it should be. He should be the favorite. And I wouldn't say there's a ton of value either way. This is a fight that you got to pick your poison. I'll be sitting back rooting Hadley on for this one. I won't have action tied up in this fight. At least I don't think so. But we'll see how that one goes. But I do have Hiestand winning a decision. Probably the most exciting fight on the card. This has to be the favorite to win fight of the night. Charles Johnson taking on Sumudaerji. Both these fighters always bring the fight. And now, speaking of fighters that were on the chopping block that have since turned things around to an extent, Charles Johnson is one of those fighters, man. Do you guys remember he was just recently on a 3-fight losing skid, right? He was going into a matchup with Azit Maxim, a fighter that we talked about earlier, also representing Kazakhstan. People were kind of high on the newcomer, and it was looking like it was going to be the end of the road for Johnson. If he would have lost that fight, he would have been on a 4-fight losing skid, probably would have been cut by the UFC. But now, instead, he's on a 3-fight winning streak. Just had that victory over Hadley, who we were talking and comparing him to. And then now just had the biggest victory of his career, if you ask me, where he had the knockout over Joshua Van, who's an absolute stud. Joshua Van already bounced back with the victory, and Van is a dangerous man. And they went to war, and he landed that shot, and he finished him up in the 3rd round. And that fight, you could take a lot away from that fight, because I think this fight has the makings of playing out similar, based on the fact that Sumudaerji will be a willing dance partner. He always brings the fight. He's looking to land his own knockout. And I could see this fight being similar to the Matt Schnell versus Sumudaerji fight, where they went to absolute war. Sumudaerji hurt Matt Schnell at times, but at the end of the day, he got clipped with the shot. I could see this fight playing out very similarly. And I do favor Charles Johnson, Inner G, being the fighter that prevails at the end of the night. He's going to be the fighter that lands that big fight-ending shot, most likely as they go to war. There's going to be a lot of quick twitch movements going on. These guys are going to be dipping, dodging, swinging, throwing strikes. You may see Sue step in with some elbows and land some nice rangy lefts at times. But Charles Johnson is a fighter that is hitting on all cylinders right now. He's 33 years old. I think he's in the prime of his career right now. He has a world of experience. He has a bunch of confidence behind him. He's on this 3-fight winning streak. And he's in there. He's moving nice, man. He's moving real nice. And I think he's going to land the mark here and get the knockout over Sumudaerji. And you can question the durability of Sue. I know you don't see any knockout losses there, but like we talked about the Schnell loss, it took a lot of damage that led him to get sucked into that triangle and submitted and to be put unconscious. Now, Charles Johnson's not much of a sub threat. Maybe he clubs and subs Sue, because it seems that's all. Sue's losses all seem to be by sub, but there's a first for everything. But he's there to be hit, and Charles Johnson is very accurate. Like I said, he's hitting on all cylinders. I can see him touching up Sue in a firefight. Give me Charles Johnson to get another W here and go on quite the winning streak. And he's a fighter that's becoming a household name in the division. So it's crazy how the tides can turn, right? You're on the chopping block, and then you're kind of a fan favorite. It's crazy. So right now, Charles Johnson is right around a minus 215 to a minus 230 favorite. He's quite the favorite there. I would say you get the comeback on Sue right around plus 190. I don't see a lot of value on almost 2-to-1 odds on Sue. I know Sue's dangerous. He's long, and he may have the possibility to land his own strikes in the feet. He's a dangerous dude, and he'll have a 2-inch reach advantage. But Charles, he's somewhat hittable, but he starts to get in rhythm, and then he'll start using his head work, and then once he gets into rhythm, he kind of takes fights over, and I expect that to be the case here. I don't see a lot of value on the underdog Sue line. My gut's telling me that Charles Johnson gets this W, so I don't want to lead you that way. Hey guys, real quick, if you want to keep up to date with me, go follow me on my social media. I'm on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _, and I'm on Twitter at The MMA Teller. You could also look me up on Facebook and TikTok. I got all that stuff going. If you guys want to keep up to date with me, where I'm posting just about every day, and I got some of the most fire memes out there, all right, go follow me. And that's where the best place you guys could see all my bets and see if I cashed or I lost on them. That's the best way to keep up to date with me. So go follow me, guys. I appreciate you a lot. We got ranked bantamweight action set to take place here. We got the number 10, Rob Font, taking on the number 12, Kyler Phillips, also known as the Matrix. Kyler Phillips, his nickname is so fitting for his fighting style. I love watching Kyler Phillips fight. The way he moves is very different than the majority of fighters in this division. Now, what's interesting about Kyler Phillips, his BJJ was his base coming into the sport of MMA. I know that was one of his initial disciplines that he really put a lot of work into, but it's his striking nowadays that stands out to me. And not to say that his BJJ is not beautiful to watch and he could really exploit you if you're not sound there. And I do expect him to have success changing levels and mixing things up in this fight. But I just want to talk about his striking here for a second, because he's been going out there and just moving lightning fast, styling on veterans like Pedro Munoz, who he just defeated Raoni Barcelos before that, hurt him in that fight, submitted Marcelo Rojo before that, all back to the loss that he took against Julian Paiva, which was just a learning experience for him. That was a fight that he had in the bag and made some questionable decisions in that fight. But still, he was 26 years old, man. He's a completely different fighter. And as mentioned, I think that if he changes levels in this fight, he can exploit Rob Font, who we've seen exploited down on the mat as of recently. You remember what Sandhagen just did to him. I mean, that was crazy. Sandhagen completely controlled him down on the mat for like 25 minutes. And then we just saw more of that against Figueiredo in Font's last fight. So Font's been struggling down there. Sure, when Font can keep it standing, his boxing is great. He pushes a crazy pace, puts a lot of volume on the opposition. But take a look at the numbers. It's actually Phillips that's landing more per minute, landing 5.72 compared to the 5.53 of Font's, while absorbing less as well. So he has a better ratio there, absorbing 3.38 compared to Font's 3.65. I think that Phillips can outstrike him there as well. So it's not like Phillips has to get this fight down to the mat. Phillips is the younger, fresher fighter here that has a lot more left to give the fight game, while Font is knocking on the door of the end of his career. He's 37 years old, been taking a lot of L's. I get it. He has a respectable name and he's put in his work. But I mean, he's getting up there in age, man. This could be close to the end for Font. I think that Phillips can land a big shot on him and hurt him. Although Font's so tough, it's hard to say he gets knocked out. I mean, he's never been knocked out in his career. The dude's head is made of wood. But be careful if a head kick slips up there if you're Font. And besides that, though, Phillips changes levels. He dictates the pace of this fight. It's a 3-rounder. This is a fight that he should really explode and have a lot of success as the fight continues on. And I like Kyler Phillips here to get the job done. And now it looks like the betting line is in agreement with me here. He opened up as a minus 270. He's now a minus 305. So action even coming in on him as wide as the line already opened up as. Now, that's minus 305. It's up there, man. And you got to put a little bit of respect on Font's name. It's not like that line's a bargain. That's a tough line. But I will say this. I think that Kyler Phillips wins this fight via unanimous decision. If he does get a finish, I say it's due to a head kick. But I will say he wins the unanimous decision. What a matchup this is in the main event. We got Michel Pereira taking on Anthony Hernandez. This is ranked middleweight action. Pereira is the number 14th ranked fighter, while Hernandez is ranked number 13. But these fighters are looking to get way lower numbers next to their names than those. I mean, these are fighters, obviously, they want to get that C next to their name. But, I mean, the winner of this fight could very easily be ranked 5, 6, 7 or something like that. I mean, he's going to significantly drop down the rankings or up, no matter how you want to word that. You know what I'm saying? He wants to go to a lower number here. And the winner will be 1 or 2 fights away from fighting for the belt after this, potentially. Okay, we brushed upon that in the intro. It's just crazy how much we know this fight is going to deliver. These guys have just been going in there and just putting on shows for us time and again. As of recently, both these guys getting a lot of finishes, and both of them have kind of had a resurgence in their careers to an extent. And I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. But right now, Hernandez is coming off a victory over Roman Kopylov. That was a huge victory for him. Kopylov's been on fire. He ate everything Kopylov threw towards his way. Looked at him with a smile, and then eventually finished him up in the second round with that rear naked choke, using his wrestling to get the fight down to the mat too. So, I mean, that was just spectacular. Before that, he finishes Edmund Shabazian, finishes Marc-Andre Barriault. Before that, Josh Friend victory there. How about the Rodolfo Vieira submission victory that he had, where he pulled in that arm-in guillotine choke? At the time, everybody thought that was like one of the most crazy upsets that we've ever seen, because Vieira was this decorated BJJ player, and then Hernandez pulled a sub off on him. Looking back in retrospect, it's funny how we understand that's exactly how that fight should have took place, because Vieira, yeah, he's a BJJ player, but he had issues with cardio. He's all muscular, didn't have a lot of MMA experience at the time. Hernandez is very durable and has very good defense as far as jiu-jitsu goes. He's not an easy fighter to sub, and he weathered the storm, and then he broke down Vieira, gassed out Vieira, and he caught him in the sub. I mean, that was what it was. His stock was so low going into that fight, though. He was coming into that fight off a knockout loss to Kevin Holland. He was also caught in anaconda choke 2 fights before that against Marcus Perez. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I never thought that Hernandez would be as good of a fighter as he is right now. He just has some serious tools, man. He has a granite chin. He could walk through shots. He'll push crazy volume on you with his boxing. He could wrestle, and then he could sub you at the end of the day too. So, I mean, he's just got a lot of stuff going for him right now. And then when we're talking Pereira, I mean, I say that he had a resurgence in his career too, because, I mean, this was a fighter that lost to Tristan Connolly, okay, towards the beginning part of his UFC career. In fact, it was in the second fight, right? He had the beautiful flying knee knockout over Danny Roberts in his debut. We thought that he was more of like a gimmicky type of fighter. He was coming in doing all the flips and whatnot, but I personally never thought he would live up to anything. I never thought he would be like a legitimate contender in this division. Yeah, he should have had the victory over Diego Sanchez. He lost that due to an illegal knee. That was really the beginning of his run, because he absolutely destroyed Diego Sanchez. He really should have got the W there. Then he's slapping Zaleem Amadaev around. If you guys remember that dude Zaleem, who was a complete fraud. He was trying to fight people backstage and at the weigh-ins and whatnot. Didn't know how to fight inside of a cage. After that, victories over Chaos Williams, Nico Price, Andre Fiallo. He went to war with Santiago Ponzinibbio. That's where he really took his game to another level. After that fight, finishes Andre Petrosky. Petrosky did take that fight on short notice, but the way he finished him within a minute was crazy. And then he's coming off 2 submission victories in a row that were after the Petrosky victory. Subs over Oleksiejczak and Ihor Peteria. He is just hitting on all cylinders. He moves like he's in the Matrix. Speaking of Kyler Phillips, I mean, the way that Pereira moves is crazy. You see how he has the breakdancing skills, does the flips and all that. I mean, you see it in his striking. He's just moving on a different wavelength. He's smacking these dudes around. And I think that he is live to land some big shots on Hernandez. That is one thing that scares me if you're back and fluffy here. He will look to walk through strikes. He'll stick his tongue at you, and he'll look to kind of intimidate you with his toughness. And you got to be careful doing that to a fighter like Pereira, because he'll head kick, knock you out, or he'll throw something very heavy down the pipe and he'll rock you. He'll sit you on your butt there. So that's something that Hernandez has to be careful about, just kind of thinking this is all a game in there, because the game will catch up with you. But I will tell you this. I mean, I will bank on Hernandez's toughness if I have to pick a side. If I have to go one way or the other, Hernandez is damn tough. And the way he was walking through Kopylov shots, I think he can kind of replicate that here. And the thing I like for Hernandez in this matchup is the fact that this is a 5-round main event fight. He has very good cardio. He can go to his wrestling late in this fight, and maybe we see some of what we saw when Pereira versus Connolly. I mean, it's hard to forget that fight, right? I know Pereira has changed as a fighter, but that was really rough, man. He gassed out against Tristan Connolly, a fighter that you should not be losing late rounds to and whatnot. So I do have to back Hernandez here, because Hernandez can also hold his own on the feet. He's the more well-rounded fighter, and he's a bully. He's just an absolute bully in there, and I'm a little bit more impressed with what I've seen from him as recently, even compared to the flashy, amazing skills that Pineda has showed us, because he's the real deal as well. I love both these fighters, man. I wish that they could both win, but obviously only one man could prevail. I'm going to side with Anthony Hernandez. I have to settle in on that spot there. Hernandez opened up as a minus 155. He's now a minus 165. I will say this. I have the value on the underdog. Okay, I'll be very clear. I think that the plus 130 next to Pineda's name is where the value stands. This fight is closer to a pick'em in my books. I have a slight lean towards Hernandez's way based on him being the more well-rounded fighter, but I'm not chalking up minus 160, 155 on Hernandez here just because Pineda is just moving differently in there, and this fight could be one that plays out very closely. If it goes to the judges' scorecards, if Pineda's cardio holds up, and it's looked to gotten a little better as of recently. We talked about that Ponzinibbio fight. He dug deep in that one, and that was more recent after the Connolly fight. So if he could hold up there, he could hold his own. This could be a fight that plays out closely. I'm excited for it, but I will settle in with the Hernandez. I'm going to say Hernandez gets a finish. Michel Pereira, he has been knocked out twice. He's never been subbed. It's interestingly enough, Hernandez has been knocked out and subbed, was knocked out by Holland, and then he was caught in a sub by Eric Perez, a low-level fighter. But he's just, Anthony Hernandez is moving differently, like I said. I'm going to say Hernandez gets the submission. I'm going to say he becomes the first man to ever submit Pineda after Pineda's taken a lot of damage. He's gassed out, and he's used a lot of energy on these high flying, jumping off the high rope type maneuvers. And I think that Hernandez is based, and he goes out there and gets a late sub, 4th or 5th round sub. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. I hope you found this episode insightful. Hopefully it gives you a nice little edge there as you target your betting lines and what fighters you want to target for this card. Don't forget, of course, you can reach out to me if you want to know exactly what I'm aiming to play. Now, got to leave you guys with some parting words. Also, I'll tell you this real quick. Hit the comment section up below. Give me 3 winners and tell me the method of victory in all 3 of them for a chance to win a free betting package from me, okay? Give me exactly how they finished the fight. So if it's a knockout, tell me round 1, 2, 3. If it's a sub, pick the round. If it's a decision, just put decision. But give me 3 winners there. If you hit all 3, I'll give you guys a free betting package for any card you guys want. And then as we depart, I'll leave you with this. Just last second, just came to me. Just try to think about this. If you're looking to improve your life and certain aspects of it, make sure you're taking note of who you surround yourself with. That really carries a lot of weight, man. You surround yourself with people that are taking their game to another level, and it will elevate you. It'll raise your game up, all right? If you're not even just hanging out with people that are down and out, but if you're just hanging out with yourself and you're not really socializing, that's a problem too. So you got to do what you got to do to go out there and surround yourself with good people. And there's ways to do that. We'll talk more about that in other closing thoughts, but you got to first and foremost understand that, okay? Because you will elevate your life and your abilities and all aspects of life. You'll elevate it to another level if you surround yourself with people that are doing so. So it's very important who you keep in your circle.
The teller.